All right, hello everybody. Welcome to our next video. This one is on a third type of election called the head-to-head comparison. This one will be fairly straightforward, though it can get pretty complex in its usage. All right, so to set the stage for this, I'd like you to consider a runoff election um, that we've held before. Um, in any case where you have a runoff, right, you might have three candidates and everybody will vote on the three candidates. One of the candidates, the one that has the lowest number of votes, will be eliminated, and then we'll do a runoff between the top two. A second election will occur, and one of those two will have a majority. And that's the way a runoff usually wins. But sometimes life doesn't work out that way. One of the things that can happen is one candidate unexpectedly drops out of the race for health reasons, for scandalous reasons, for really anything. Um, so, it might be interesting to predict who could win in a runoff between any two candidates, not just any one, any like normal vote getters, but what could happen between any two, because you might find patterns in who can beat who and what type of candidate is good and what type of candidate is not so good in certain ways. Um, so let's jump into this, and you'll get a chance to see kind of how this works. So for this, we are going to revisit this particular election. So here's an election that we did in our last video between Coleman, Horowitz, and Taylor. Um, there were 5 voters, and they had to vote on a new representative, supposedly, for this small group. And we have ranked choice voting that is available for this group. So again, this is going to be another election in which we can't predict this unless we have ranked choice voting. So this is one of those types, just like we talked about in the state of Maine, how when you have the ranked choice ballot, it avoids the need from having to do a second or even third election. They can extrapolate runoff results directly from that. Same thing here. Um, this is infeasible to pull off without having to do a ranked choice ballot. So we have Coleman, Horowitz, and Taylor, same numbers as last time. Again, remember that second column, there were 2 voters who voted for that way. Okay, now in the normal case, we looked at who would win and who would lose, right? So if we remember here in our original vote, oops, I guess you're getting that little eraser icon. Not entirely sure why. That's okay. Um, okay, whatever. So we'll erase this. Get rid of that. Oh, there we go. I've gotten rid of that. Okay. Oh, wait, maybe not. Okay. So having a little bit of fun with my tablet pen. That's okay. All right. So let's take a look at this. So in this particular election, let's say remember that we had Coleman, Horowitz with 2, and Taylor each had 2. So in this particular case, who would drop? Coleman would drop because they only got 1 vote, right? So in the original formulation of the original runoff, we had Horowitz versus Taylor. And in that case, who wins, right? So our question is always, who wins in that situation? So remember, when Coleman is eliminated, go to your second choice. In this case, second choice, who is this voter going to vote for? They'll vote for Horowitz. Horowitz will win 3-2. Okay. So let's say now we realize the situation. Let's say, these politicians are smart, right? And Taylor. Taylor kind of sees this coming, and he realizes that if it goes to a runoff, Horowitz seems like he'd have the advantage. So let's say um, Taylor understands this. And based on that, he doesn't want to waste any more time or anyone more of people's money. And so he drops out of the race early. Let's say Taylor drops early simply because he knows he can't win. Well, what's going to happen? Now the election is between Coleman and Horowitz. And again, the question is, who wins in a race between these two? Well, let's see. Again, our ones are going to be fine. But now these people that voted for Taylor, they're going to have to go to their second place. So this voter is going to switch to Coleman. Okay. This voter, his second place is Horowitz. So Horowitz still wins by a count of 3-2. Okay. And just for completion's sake, let's say that Horowitz drops out of the race. Again, we can be, we'll take the high road here and we'll say that, let's say maybe Horowitz had some kind of medical issue or something that is he feels is preventing him from taking on this position. So he no longer is in the running. What will happen now that the top vote getter is gone? Well, Taylor's going to get these votes, remember, and Coleman's gets this vote. The one that matters, these two people that voted for Horowitz outright, who are they going to go to? They're going to go to Coleman. So in a matchup of Coleman versus Taylor, it's going to be Coleman that wins 3-2. Okay, so what patterns do you see? First off, you might notice how Taylor has no chance in this situation. He loses to both Horowitz and Coleman in a head-to-head match, and that's probably why he drops out of the race in the first place. Coleman only has a chance if Horowitz drops. So it's worth maybe for Coleman to hang on here because you never know what could happen. Horowitz, though, he's got the upper hand. He wins as long as he remains in the race. And so one thing that's important here, Horowitz beats both of his opponents in head-to-head matchups. Okay. Now let's think about this for a second. Now Horowitz wins the election. Yes, it's a runoff, but he wins the election against Taylor and Coleman together. Well, Coleman and Taylor are going to split votes among each other, right? Like they're going to split votes that Horowitz doesn't receive. So the fact that Horowitz can beat Coleman singly and beat Taylor singly is kind of important. And the fact is that seems to say that Horowitz is more popular than each other candidate taken one at a time. This is called the head-to-head winner. And this is happening because Horowitz is more popular than each other candidate taken one at a time. Okay. This is an example of what we call a Condorcet winner. It's a candidate that can beat all other candidates in a head-to-head matchup. An election sometimes has one. Here's a case where this is a particular election type, and yes, there are places that use this, but it's not always going to work. There are plenty of elections out there in which you could have A can beat B, B can beat C, and then C beats A. Almost like a game of rock, paper, scissors. So there are plenty of times where that can happen too. And in those situations, if election were run under this method, then they would have to choose an alternate method in order to um, find a winner. In general, what they do in that case, it could differ. They could go with a plurality vote, majority vote, runoff, doesn't matter. Um, I've heard of many different methods um, that they could use. So, but this is called a Condorcet winner because it's named after a Frenchman, a Mr. Condorcet, who came up with this back in the 1700s. Now, there's also called a weak Condorcet winner, and in a weak Condorcet winner, there is a candidate, or in that case, sometimes multiple candidates, who either beat or tie, but never loses to any other candidate. That includes the cases, again, where ties happen. Okay, so let's see a bigger example of this. 1990, Louisiana governor's race. So you may wonder why this one in particular. And sometimes I pull out random examples like, okay, political, like presidential elections. Okay, fine. Like those are important. So here is a 1990 Louisiana governor's race. And why am I pulling this one out? Of all the things I could do, why this one and not like a Connecticut one or anything like that? There's a story behind this one. Okay, so there are three people in this. God, I forget who. I forget the names associated with it. I believe Larry Romer. I want to say it's Larry Romer, but I can't. It's in your books, folks. I'd have to look it up. So actually, let me take a second and let me go dig at the textbook. And okay, so I just went and looked it up real quick. So here's the story behind this one. In this particular race, there is one person who is the current governor. That was Buddy Romer. He's the incumbent, which means he's the one who was in office at the time of this election. He has two strong candidates behind him because Romer switched from Democrat to Republican while in office, which is fairly unusual, but he does. And he alienates a lot of voters because he's trying to reform state government. And just in general, switching parties like that is just generally not a good thing because then people don't buy your allegiances. Democrats hate him because all of a sudden everything that he, campaigned on all of a sudden is now out the window. And Republicans don't trust him because suddenly, why are you suddenly on my side? So they're not ready to trust him yet. He alienates a lot of people doing this. The next guy on the list is Edwin Edwards. Edwin Edwards comes up and he's a strong candidate to beat Mr. Romer, except that he had served jail time on corruption charges. Yikes. Okay, so he is fraud, corrupt, etc. So he's got a lot of baggage coming in, right? All right. So maybe there's somebody else who can who might step up to be a shining moral candidate against these two. So who steps up to challenge these two? David Duke. Do you know that name? The Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. Yeah. So this was a triple header of really, really bad candidates. So this was an awful, awful election all around in terms of the quality of people that were running for governor. So this election is pretty famous for that as just the one big shining example of that. So anyway, So I bring this up. Now, they in Louisiana do not do ranked choice voting. Um, so the numbers that you see here are just all um, surmised, but they got these values. These are an attempt at reality using exit poll data and um, supposition data from that they got from other people and people that work closely with this election. Okay, so this represents what some experts might feel would be the right choice ballot if one were exist. Okay, let's run through everything here. Okay, let's start with the Condorcet winner. So here we're looking for which candidate would beat the other two head to head. When you do this, okay, and you can see, like, right now, we really only have to test three things. There are three different pairs that we can do. Edwards Duke, Duke Romer, and Edwards Romer. When you get to four candidates, with four candidates, you're going to have to check potentially six pairs. If you have five candidates, you potentially have upwards of 24 pairs to check. So that gets to be really, really harsh, really fast. I think it's 24. It might be 10. No, it's 10. But anyway, it's a lot of pairs. So yeah, it's not this, it's 10. Okay, so you have quite a bit that you have to check. My mouse keeps disappearing. There we go. Okay, so you potentially have a lot here that you need to check. Don't worry about it though. In this one, we're going to do a pretty quick little example. Okay, so let's erase all of this here, okay? I like to check time. How am I doing on time? Perfect. Okay, so who is the Condorcet winner? For this, just pick any two. Okay. The nice part about it is when you find that one candidate loses, you no longer really have to check any of their um, future um, elections or any future combinations involving that losing candidate because they can no longer be a Condorcet winner. And remember, they have to at least tie everybody. All right, so let's just pick the first two. So anyway, let's pick Edwards versus Duke. Okay, let's say who would win in that election? Okay, so again, Edwards versus Duke, just circle all the ones in those columns. Okay, now here, remember, if it's Edwards Duke, you can't choose the ones here, so we're going to go with the twos. Okay, so in this particular case here, who wins? Let's see, 23%. 23%. Oh, that looks like that's a win right there because that's 51% plus 9 is 60%. Okay, so it looks like we're going to have Edwards is going to win 60% of the time. Okay, so the next combination now that we have to check. So now let's erase this. So now we don't have to check any more Duke ones yet, unless we get a change later. So now let's do Edwards versus Romer. So Edwards versus Romer, who's going to win? So Duke is now gone. Edwards, Romer, and these ones in the middle. These ones are going to be twos. Okay, so who wins in this particular case? We get 20 plus 8, 48. So Edwards gets 48, and 46 plus 6 is 52. So Romer, 52%. Okay. So here's a difference. All right, so Edwards and Romer each have a win. Now, because here, Duke has lost once, Edwards has lost once, Romer is the only person left, so let's make sure that he can beat Duke in a head-to-head match. Okay, so in this case, we do have to check another Duke, and that's okay. Sometimes that happens. All right, so now let's go um, Duke versus Romer. And who's going to win here? So Duke versus Romer, we'll have, again, circle all the ones. Here, who's going to go here? Duke's going to pick up these. Romer's going to pick up those. And it's a pretty clear Romer win there. So here, 23 plus 6 is 29, plus 28 is 57. So Romer, 57%. Guess what? So Romer's our Condorcet winner. He's our head-to-head person. He can beat the other two in a head-to-head match. All right. So how did this shake up for real? In Louisiana, they use a plurality into a runoff. In this particular case, it is very, very close. But what winds up happening is you have 23 and 26 is 29% of the vote. And so what eventually happens is Romer does lose in this particular case. So he does lose and he's eliminated. So the runoff is between Edwards and Duke. Now, Romer has no love for Edwards, right? And they've been adversaries politically for a very long time. But they have a common enemy in David Duke, and it would be both of them understand just how bad it would look for the state of Louisiana for Duke to get elected in this case. And so Romer endorses Edwards, and in the runoff, he endorses Edwards, and Edwards wins handily in the runoff in that case. So Edwards does eventually become the governor of Louisiana in that case. Okay. And what's interesting is this Edwin Edwards should not be confused with John Bell Edwards, who is the current governor of Louisiana. So kind of a coincidence there. I don't know if they're related or not. Okay, so there's an explanation of head-to-head winner. And, in class we'll try a few more examples of this using some larger elections. But this should do for now. So we will say that Romer is our head-to-head winner. He beats both other candidates, and there you go. All right, try a few of the examples if you want to try a few. There's some right there to do. 3, 4, 9, and 11 on page 42. Okay, I will see you guys later. Thanks for watching.